Good morning, good morning, good morning. This is Tasemere, your host from the Blackout Live from New York. And our purpose is to celebrate Black folks across the diaspora and to have an open dialogue about Black economics, how we reimagine trends in business and explore the magic that we have. Today, we are interviewing two folks. Charlie O'Donnell is the sole partner and founder at Brooklyn Bridge Venture Fund, and he makes seed and pre-seed investments and was the first venture firm located in Brooklyn. And then we also have Naomi Alexis, who is a fellow for Charlie at the fund. But prior to that, she has had about 20 years in hospitality at some of the country's finest dining establishments. She has also spent the past 5 years developing and launching a multi-stakeholder cooperative. And so we are going to be talking about, what does VC funding look like? What do founders look like when they're thinking about investing in entrepreneurs? But also, what does this mean for Black founders? What do we have to bring to the table in order to have a better shot at VC funding? And so I'm going to bring Naomi up. Good morning, Naomi. How are you?
Good morning. Thank you for having me. I'm good.
No problem. Charlie will likely chime in at some point, and then we'll bring him on. But wanted to let's just jump right in. Give us a little bit about your background. I know I just gave a little brief little snippet, and then let's just get right into it. What is VC funding, and how does this whole thing work?
So I met Charlie, I'll say, at the top of the pandemic in June of 2020. But we were discussing, or I came to one of his not a pitch sessions. He has kind of informal get feedback for your pitch sessions. If you have an idea or if you have an actual product or service that's already in the works. And we discussed funding and how we can better fund our community, because Charlie's focused on funding businesses here in New York City, and how we can better fund more Black businesses in the community, more different kinds of business models, because I am a cooperative founder and I believe in a little bit more equity than we're used to seeing in most businesses and corporations. But we met and he offered me this fellowship, and I decided it was a great opportunity to learn funding in general and how to manage a fund if I wanted to start my own in the future or work for another fund in the future. And here we are. And I guess if you want to go ahead and ask me questions, are there questions?
Of course. So when people are thinking about VC funds, in my opinion, I think people think this is a handout. I can kind of get an investor to just invest in my company and I don't have to go through traditional financing. Do you feel that that's also a perspective that you have seen other entrepreneurs come with? And is that the right perspective people should have when they're approaching these investors and these funds?
It really depends. With all VC investing, there's there are specific agreements you come to and how much or what place the VC has in making decisions for the business. For the most part, when you invest as a VC fund, you are acquiring shares early in the business in exchange, and they have a certain value, and that value determines your financial control of the business. But you might also have a seat on the board or board advisory position in which you can have some kind of actual control of the business itself in terms of how it runs. So I think people assume that maybe, I think loans are a little bit easier because you just get the money and you do your thing. VC actually requires some collaboration with the VC, at least. We still go to board meetings where we have influence or have impact on how the business runs, and also just kind of call you up and ask you how things are going. So when we want an update, we want to know how you're performing, what's revenue look like, what's the plan going forward, if we've gotten that far. Sometimes we invest so early that there's not a product until very, a couple of years later. But sometimes people come to you with just an idea and maybe the knowledge on how to execute, but that could take up to 2 years, depending on, whether it's technology that has to be built or a business that has to be built out. Excuse me.
So you mentioned shares, and I think that this is interesting because sometimes the actual business structure might not even be set up to give or divvy out shares, right? So I think that that's also one thing that entrepreneurs should think about is the actual structure of their company.
Right.
Does it even lend itself to maybe having an investor? Because if you have an LLC, there are no real shares in your business. You're going to have to switch to a corporation or something of that sort, which definitely changes your tax status. But we have to also start thinking about just the legal structure and if we can even hold an investor.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so let me ask another question. What are some things or qualities that you find most successful founders have come to with pitches? What were some of their qualities? And I'm going to go off screen so you.
The most successful pitches, I think, come from founders who know how to tell a story about their product or service, about the market that it serves, and about their interest in collaborating with the VC on how to move forward.
Sorry, you didn't hear my question. I was asking a question and everything. I was asking, are there some commonalities that you find that makes it difficult for VCs to want to invest in something that's just an idea, or even if it's a little bit more fleshed out?
I think first of all, the capabilities of the team. Can they build this on their own? Like, is this something that they have the capability of owning? If it's just one founder, that's one thing. If it's a partnership, if it's a group of founders, then are these people that work well together, have a cohesive idea and thought process, a cohesive plan for the future, and do they collaborate in a way in which if one of them left, that there would be no ill will between them and could still continue on. The business could continue. Not ill will, because who knows, but still continue business in the face of adversity. And like I said, just being able to tell the story really well about what this product or service is and what the market it serves.
So does that look like a deck? Does that look like just I come out to this event and I'm just going to be super charismatic and get up there and just pitch my heart out and get you there, and then you're on the hook? Or I think that sometimes VCs want something in writing, but maybe I could be a little off.
It depends. Yeah, a good pitch deck helps. I go through our deal flow, and I see our incoming pitches, and I read all of the pitch decks, and something engaging does help. It's something that looks like either they took time to put it together, and then it makes sense, and it looks decent, or that they invested their income or their money to get someone to do it professionally and do it well.
Mm-hmm.
So that speaks to preparedness. That speaks to a vision. It speaks to a thought out what our business is, where our market is. It speaks to a certain amount of resolution in the idea, and this is our thing and this is what we want to show you to give us money. And, you know, but like I said, some people just come with like an idea and a slide. But it's
So
so
let's get into it now. I want
it's
to know about
go ahead.
Black founders,
Yes.
because I do really focus a lot on Black economics and how do Black folks across the diaspora start to really look at entrepreneurship as being a real career, right?
Right.
And so when we're thinking about Black founders, and I work with them on just getting their business plans done, and I have my own reasons and that I've shared with you offline about why I think sometimes VC funding might be a little bit challenging for them. But wanting to know, what are your thoughts around Black founders and entering this market of wanting to go after VC funds?
I mean, I think I have this is my first foray into VC. So Brooklyn Bridge Ventures is my first fund, where I'm seeing our portfolio and I see our deal flow as it comes in. And I will say that we have a decent amount of founders that are Black. We have a lot of, well, not a lot, but there's a very diverse set of backgrounds amongst our portfolio. We meet with Black founders all the time, and these guys come in with great ideas. They come in with knowledge and capability, and they tell stories really, really well, and they have executed something, and they are also knowledgeable to some extent of what a VC expected, and I think we talked about this earlier, that there is a revolving door between VC, working in VC, and being an entrepreneur, because it is such a similar kind of not only mindset but skill set.
Well, you brought up something earlier that I kind of want to talk about a bit more. You brought up sometimes when you're looking for investment, people want to also understand your exit strategy. Like, okay, this is not a long-term for life kind of investment. At some point, I'm looking to, make some money off of this encounter with you, right? Do you feel, or from your experience of reviewing these portfolios, not just at the fund that you're a fellow at now, but just in the ecosystem, do you think that Black founders are coming to funds with an exit merger acquisition strategy in mind? Or do you think that it's kind of like, I just want this to do my thing?
To be honest, nobody comes at you with, they come to you with go-to-market schemes. They come to you with like projections, but nobody knows who's going. Like one of our portfolio companies, Pedal, recently was, I believe it was. I'm not sure if it was acquired or if it was IPO'd at like 800 million. But most people know what an exit is. Like that's the only way VCs make money. We only make money with exit. So typically the structure is you invest for can be up to 7 years before you see a return, and the return usually happens when there's an exit, which is either being acquired by someone, or your initial public offering and become a publicly traded company. So depending on what the company is valuated when it does IPO, that's when we actually get the payback for our investment, and that can take up to 7 years. So that's what people should have in mind, like that time frame, that length of investment. But in the meantime, things can come along. 3 years into your 3 years into your operating your business, you can have I'm sorry.
No, that's fine.
Someone could acquire you. You could have it depends. It really is like an individual, but you should have the idea that VCs want their money back within 7 years. So either you're IPOing or you're getting, there's an exit, because that's how we get our money back.
That is, to me, that's a good nut for Black founders to start cracking, because from my work, to be quite honest, I don't see a lot of Black founders thinking, even considering what an exit might look like for them. I think that they're just like, first of all, let's back up. They don't even have a business plan. So in order to even come up with an exit strategy, you first have to have some remnants of a business plan.
Right. And so the exit is only important for really for VC. Because unless you're to be honest, like in the ecosystem of business, like there's businesses that operate in a constant loss. There's businesses that break even sometimes. There's businesses that have good years and bad years, and then there's that constantly operate, in the profit, which is, very rare, but still, like there is always like a, so you have to be knowledgeable about like just the success rate of businesses in general, and then think about how long people toil.
I agree. This is all great information, because I feel like when we are thinking about VCs, now that this has become a thing, I think that this has always been a thing, but we just kind of got wind of like, oh my gosh, there's these VC funds and investors that I can go to, and I can pitch them my idea or my concept, and maybe they might want to invest in me. But I think we brought up some good points for people that might just be tuning in. One, like, do you have the right legal structure in order to even, bring on some sort of investment, which definitely cannot be an LLC, right? Like you have to be able to give shares of your business away at some point when you're bringing on the investor, but also thinking about your exit strategy, which I also think is something that we don't necessarily think about enough, and able to articulate that for ROI for an investor. So like, I'm going to get your money at this time and in X amount of years. To your point, no more than 7, right? Maybe a little bit later. You can expect to see a return on your investment because I'm planning on doing blah, 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 blah. At least what the ideal plan would be, knowing that might actually change. We're talking to Naomi from Brooklyn Bridge Venture Fund, and she's a fellow. And so wanted to just keep going down this road, this path here. I'm finding in some of my work that some Black founders are not comfortable with numbers. Do you also find that to possibly be a challenge with the proposals or pitches that you have seen either at the fund or otherwise?
I mean, if you market projection, usually if you don't have an entrepreneur, I was a bookkeeper and had a lot of knowledge about accounting, and so I don't know anything about numbers, but and even if he wasn't, I would have hired someone who was, or worked with someone who could advise me, on how. There are so many resources. So yes, there is a lack of education, I would say, in general about like how you operate, what your structure should be legally, how you run your books, how you fund your, how you all that stuff. I think it's something that lacks, that we're everybody talks about entrepreneurship, but like, do you know how businesses work?
That is a good point. That's a good point, because I think entrepreneurship for us has been something that we might not have seen ourselves taking space in for a while, or we might have been doing it as just a side hustle, but nothing really formal, right? And there's a formal structure to doing business, but then there's an even more formalized structure to getting investment money, right? And I think that there is a knowledge gap of just terminology, right? Like, I think that when you're going to funds and you're talking to an investor, you have to also speak the language of the investor, right? So they're wanting to know certain things about like your cap table and your ROI and your go-to-market strategy. And the strategy can't just be, I'm going to be doing it on IG all day, and that's how I'm going to plan on getting my customers. They might also want to know your acquisition rate and how long is the lifetime of that customer. I think that those are some things that we as a diaspora people aren't always comfortable speaking in those kind of terms. And I think that makes it challenging for people to really understand that you actually are sitting in your business and that they can trust you with their money. Because at some point, they're like, okay, I gave you $100,000. Well, am I going to get my money back? Right?
How are you spending it?
How are you spending it? Is this like $100,000 just for you to pay yourself or your salary or something like that? I think that we also have to start thinking about the different types of investment, right? Because now we have crowdfunding, we have friends and family rounds, right?
I mean, that's what I will say. The lack of the ability to have friends and family rounds in the Black community is also a huge barrier, because we're a negative wealth community, unfortunately. And even those of us who do we live in community with people who need us and our support financially. So that stepping stone to getting to because that's really when people cut their teeth on learning the ins and outs of investing, is this friends and family round. Like if you have people who are angels who just put money and then invest in business, that's usually the first step towards VC. And that is, again, that's all network, that is all knowing people or knowing how this works, because that is a very first step in most people who are entrepreneurs looking for funding, or just have a business and someone taps their shoulder and says, hey, I'm an angel who golf would love to throw some money at you. And it might just be $5,000. It might be each of them giving you $5,000, but that's usually the first step. And that's usually how you get that education on how angel investing works, how VC works, how PE works. But I wanted to speak to something you said about the lingo. First of all, I have an entire document that's 3 pages long of just abbreviations that they throw around in board meetings, in pitch meetings. There is so much lingo that we don't know. And the other thing I wanted to say was, so it is important to get to know that language, CAC, OPM, all these things. I live behind an AutoZone, car parts store, and there is a huge informal economy in the Black community. Huge. Hair braiders, accountants who do your taxes, mechanics who fix cars. There's so many mechanics who come to this parking lot in front of my apartment building that they have a lockbox, 2 lockboxes with tools, equipment. I mean, it's such an informal economy of mechanics who fix cars, not in shops. But that's how we have survived as people. My grandfather owned the general store, the small town he's from down in Georgia, or my great grandfather, I'm sorry, and traded and bartered. There is a space for that because we have been left out of the informal economy for so long that we had to form our own informal economy. And it doesn't have cap tables. There's not a lot of bookkeeping. We don't always have profit necessarily. You know what I'm saying? That can be measured in the way that the formal economy is a way to turn that knowledge into an avenue into learning about this kind of investing also, or this kind of business structure, so that it's less informal and that we can get investment one day if we needed it.
So how would you say an average entrepreneur, hey, I have this cool idea, or I am doing something in my home, and if I just had $100,000 infused into my business, I could probably, make $1 million next year. Let's just say, because that's just how sometimes thoughts come up, right? How would that very novice entrepreneur even start getting the vocabulary for investment? Like, are there books that they should be reading? Are there clubs that they should be joining? Are there groups that they should be tuned into? Where do they even start before they approach the fund or the angel or the whomever? Where should they even start?
I started at the Brooklyn Public Library. I'm going to be honest with you. I had them like pull books out of storage. Like I did my homework for years before I started my business. So I think if you really are serious about it, if you're like that mechanic in front of my house fixing somebody's car and you want to get your own shop, like you got to sit down in business class and learn about how to run a business. It's not, I mean, if you want to, there's always this, like I said, there's space for the informal, but if you want to move it to the formal, like you have to learn the lingo, you have to learn how to structure your business. So the library was the first start. New York City has so many resources for entrepreneurs, for business people who want to start businesses, for people who want to turn their businesses into co-ops, for people who want to learn about funding. I took a class at the Brooklyn Public Library about funding. There's so many ways that you can do it if you have the time, but that are not costly, that you can do, if you can dedicate your time to it. There's books to read, there's courses to take online. There's opportunity available to learn.
So I know most people many people that are entrepreneurs or into entrepreneurship, they watch shows like The Profit, they watch shows like Shark Tank, and they're like, all I need to do is just have a really great pitch. If I just come out there and I'm just like super charismatic, I'm making people laugh, I'm connecting with the people in the crowd, I think they're picking up my vibe, what I have is kind of dope or whatever, that's all I need to hook an investor. Is that, I kind of see your face, is that enough? Because I think that there are some notions that all you have to do is have a great presentation and you don't really need to know all of these things. Is that enough to even, get the attention of people?
Yeah, absolutely. That's how, I mean, like I said, a compelling story, or no, it's not absolutely enough, but like it can be. It really depends. Like if you can tell a compelling story, an angel will be right there. I mean, a really bad example. This woman, Elizabeth Holmes, she had a compelling story. Everybody wanted to hear it. They gave her billions of dollars because she told a compelling story. I mean, it was a lot of like psychological trickery, staring at you, and but like, told that story compellingly to the point of billions of dollars. I mean, she was lying. You don't want to be a liar, but if you tell the story convincingly, people will give you money from the angel round on up.
I agree. So when you see folks or businesses, not even folks, when you see brands and they're saying that they got Series A, Series B, Series C funding, but they're still not profitable, as someone that's sitting in a fund, what does that mean to you? What kind of insight do you kind of, or what do you kind of like derive from those kind of instances?
I mean, I think it's funny because you learn more from what we call failures than you do from your successes. So it really depends. We're pre-seed and seed, so like we don't see them past. I mean, not that we don't see them. the point, but like our relationship to them is after pre-seed and A becomes like.
Well, we'll break that down because some people might not even know that's viewing or will view later, might not even have, again, this terminology of pre-seed and seed, Series A. So can you just give them a quick little, just enough for them to have to go to the library and get some more information, but a quick little synopsis of what that is.
So there are different rounds, meaning like different periods where you go out and fundraise. So depending on, as you move along in the process of developing your business or running your business, depending on what stage you're at, you can ask for investment from the beginning. You can have just an idea and ask for investment and, get started that way. And that's usually what we call friends and family. That's your before the pre-seed, actually. So you get the friends and families going, and that's how you get started. And then you go out for like your pre-seed, and then you get your seed, and then you go to an A series and B, and you can go all the way to D. There are usually like a year and a half. Like there's also really depends on the progress of your business or service. If it moves faster than others, then your fundraising might take a different trajectory. I suggest people learn or go and read like NVCA. The NVCA is a great resource for learning about VC in general. It's bear with me, I'm going to look up what that stands for. It's terrible. I have their syllabus open on my desktop. It's the National Venture Capital Association.
So that's a good start, folks.
Yeah.
That's where you can actually start if you have no idea what any of this new alphabet soup means and you're thinking about how you're going to start approaching funds. It would be in your best interest to maybe go do some research, and this is one of the places where you can start.
Absolutely. NVCA.
VCA.org.
NVCA.
NVCA.org.
Correct.
And so another question, and then feel free to just chime in about some things that maybe I haven't talked about. We talked about a little bit about the knowledge gap, the vocabulary gap, the legal structure that you need to be being charismatic during your pitch. But are there, on a national level, are there any things that you think that when you're going to market, let's say you're not in New York, you're maybe, let's pick someplace else, maybe Nebraska or something like that. Maybe you're like, hey, I don't even know if we have any VC funds, right? Are there resources that can list out where different funds are located, or maybe what they're, like how we said that Brooklyn Bridge venture is pre-seed and seed? Do you just have to do your own augmentation of these different funds and kind of like get a whiff of where they are, or is there a resource that kind of gives that to you?
I think you being curious and finding, like, we will always recommend people find investors that are local to them, because it's a stronger investment in their own community, and I think that's important. But there are VCs everywhere. There are people there are funds in all parts of this country. There are funds in Arizona, there's funds in California, but there's funds everywhere. So it depends on who you're looking for. And there's also funds that you will never find on the internet. There are funds that only people, they're like a friends and family office, and you don't know them until someone introduces you to them. But there are funds that have a large web presence and you can find very easily. It really depends. And like I said, what makes VC kind of insular is that is like I said, the revolving door between entrepreneurship and VC, because people who it's like a bug. People who work in VC love startup business. They love startups, and that's why they work with so many startups. But that means that they also sometimes get the bug and want to have their own startup. So it's a very insular kind of like back and forth dance that VCs and entrepreneurs do. But also for folks that are not in VC, I would suggest like the Twitter. I interviewed a group of VCs like just to ask about how did you get started? What was your process? What was your focus? What was your intention in entering VC? Every one of them uses Twitter as a resource.
That's a great jewel right there. Now, my final question is going to be, and you can feel free to say, I'm not going to answer this online, but my final question would be, do you think that some Black founders are using this notion of VC funding as a way in which they can get some reparations?
Absolutely not.
Because I find, and the reason why I say that is because I find that people come with this whole like almost like this is they should invest in me, right? Like they should be willing to give me some money because of whatever, and maybe they might come with like the whole sad sob story of what I don't have and what I can't do and why it's so hard, and they should just give this to me because I have a great idea. That's why I was asking that question. So I just wanted to see what your thoughts would be about that.
No, I haven't encountered that at all. All of our Black founders have like a great product, a great knowledge on how to make that product work and how to make their business run. And so we just collaborate with them. I have not encountered anyone who feels like they're owed VC funding. And VC funding still only funds like 1% of Black businesses. Like, come on. Suddenly, after the whole George Floyd thing, all of a sudden VC is now open to everyone. It's not. Nothing has changed, unfortunately. If anything, there's a huge backlash. So, I don't like, and that still wouldn't be reparations anyway. But an investment is not, making us whole.
Yeah. I want to take this time to just let people know that you can definitely send some questions in the chat. I'm not going to keep Naomi here all morning because it is Saturday morning. We both are like up super early, but want to definitely make sure that we answer your questions as we start to wrap up right now. Just to reset, if you're just tuning in, we have been talking about, what VC funds are, some resources that you can get, some vocabulary and terms that are usually necessary, and just how to kind of be a little bit more prepared when you're going after VC investors and where you can start looking. And Naomi has been very frank. You got to do the research, okay? You got to take the time to invest in understanding the vocabulary, doing some homework, understanding that there's some places that you're not even going to know exist until you actually start moving around in the space. Twitter is a good resource. A lot of the VC funds and investors and such are on Twitter. So you just do some light investigation before you even start approaching folks about investing in your business, and also understanding that the way that the funds get their money back is when you exit, merger. Something has to happen where you can withdraw some money. So this isn't like, hey, I'm just going to, infuse this money in your business and you're just going to sit there and like that's going to be it. That's more like a loan. Just go to a bank and just ask for a loan or figure it out yourself. But don't go to the investors asking the investors for something, and there might not even be a pathway for them to, get their money back. Naomi, are there any final thoughts that you want to share before we go?
I would say a lot of time in your deck and make it tell a good story, be compelling, make it cohesive, make it, thoughtful, add number. We want to hear about the market, even if you don't know, even if it's just a thought and you think you can look up the market numbers, put it on a slide. Let us know that you're at least have an eye towards like what this business can do in terms of return or return on the investment.
Do you want to shout out the fund that you are representing today, and then how people can connect with you if they, have more questions?
Brooklyn Bridge Ventures, them on Twitter, and I am also on Twitter, and Alexis, I think.
Thank you so much for joining this morning. I learned a lot about the minds of VCs and that whole jazz. Didn't know about the 7 year. I knew there was an exit that was needed, but not really thinking in 7 year terms. Definitely feel free to tune in next week, Saturday, as we continue on this pathway of the Blackout Live from New York every Saturday at 10:15 Eastern. See you then. Ciao.